Today we're going over the top 10 abandoned places in Connecticut. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of abandoned places in Connecticut, so make sure you like if you want to see a part 2. Today the list is going to start off easy, and the spots are going to get cooler and cooler as the list goes on, so make sure you watch until the end. I must say this for legal reasons, but I do not recommend going to any of these places. Trespassing is illegal, and you can be punished to the full extent of the law. With that being said, the first spot on our list is the Aerosol Techniques factory in Milford. Hidden behind a dense tree line that divides the Hilton Hotel and Lowe's department store resides a 176,000 square foot abandoned aerosol factory. Abandoned since the mid-1990s, the factory has been empty for over 20 years. Erected in the late 1960s, Aerosol Techniques made aerosol products in plastic bottles. On the property are two massive buildings, and the sheer size of the facility is awe-striking. Now, completely overgrown and reclaimed by nature, it acts as a museum for graffiti artists who call this sprawling industrial complex home. Connecting the two giant structures is a bridge covered entirely in graffiti. This factory has seen numerous owners over the years, who all lost the property. In 2011, the property has been open for development and unowned. Bridgeport Brass Company in Bridgeport. This company was organized in 1865 to make brass clock movements, and later made hoop skirt frames, kerosene parlor lamps, and the first successful kerosene bicycle lamp in 1893. Bridgeport Brass Company produced the first copper wire strung between New York and Boston, and was a pioneer in the adaptation of the electric furnace to the brass industry. Remington Arms Munition Factory in Bridgeport. The Bridgeport production complex was built in 1867 by the Union Metallic Cartridge Company, and the iconic shot tower was completed in 1909. The 10-story, 190-foot tall tower was the tallest building in Connecticut for years, and was intended to be both functional and ornamental. Production of shot involved pouring molten metal through a sieve at the top and then dropping it 133 feet so that the perfect spheres would form and then be cooled and solidified by water in the basement. Though there were numerous accidents on site, perhaps the most noteworthy disaster occurred at the plant in 1906 when 16 tons of gunpowder exploded, causing damage as far away as Long Island. Although miraculously, no one was killed. Several years later, the Union Metallic Cartridge Company merged with Remington in 1912. The Bridgeport factory became the company's headquarters, and the property was expanded to 73 acres. As one might expect, Remington's Bridgeport facilities were a major manufacturing location for arms in both World Wars, producing weapons used by the United States, Britain, France, and Russia. During the Depression, however, the company struggled financially and sold a controlling share of its stock to gunpowder and manufacturer DuPont. Though the company diversified over the years, manufacturing clothing, typewriters, household utensils, cash registers, and tools at various plants across the United States, firearms and ammunition continued to be their primary source of income. In 1970, a new ammunition factory was opened in Lenoke, Arkansas, and production of munitions was discontinued in Bridgeport. The massive complex was left to rot, becoming both a symbol of economic loss for the city and also a daunting and expensive remediation project that made repurposing the land difficult. Remington filed for bankruptcy in 2018 and again in 2020. Lincoln Lake Lodge in Colchester. This once beautiful family resort built in the early 1900s now lays in disrepair. Originally named after the Grandview Hotel, this impressive family resort gained its notoriety in the early 1900s during the resort era. Fondly referred to as the Catskills of Connecticut, it now lies in decrepit condition on its original grounds in the woods of Colchester, Connecticut. In 1958, the Davis family purchased the property and changed the name of the resort to the Lincoln Lake Lodge, which the family turned into a premier music venue and bed and breakfast. The lodge hosted over 100 large events, including shows by Kool and the Gang. Unfortunately, the lodge bed and breakfast was shut down in 2000, but the music venue rocked on until 2011, when the entire 120-acre complex went out of business and was boarded up and the grounds fell into disrepair. The property was listed for sale in 2013, but the buildings and grounds were beginning to deteriorate. Trash and room belongings littered the property, and the main guest house actually collapsed into itself. Hearthstone Castle in Danbury. The castle was built in 1895 to a wealthy local family. For years, the castle served as a residence and a summer home for the keepers. Materials to create and furnish the castle were flown in from around the globe, helping to make this place a palace of luxury. The castle changed ownership and name many times over the years, before finally being sold to the town of Danbury in 1987. It was here that things began to take a dark turn for the castle. Though it was declared a National Historic Place, the property rapidly began to fall into disrepair. Nobody seemed quite sure what to do with the castle. Many proposals have come and gone with what would be next for the old castle, even as nature slowly began to strike back. Mansfield Training School and Hospital in Mansfield. Mansfield was opened in 1917 when two hospitals in the area merged. They opened to 402 patients, and by 1932, it skyrocketed to 1,070 residents. The hospital was very overcrowded and even had a long waiting list. Mansfield had allegations of poor conditions and abuse, and had many lawsuits about conditions. By 1960s, there were 1,600 patients and 875 staff. By the 1970s and 80s, patients started to be transferred to group homes, and by 1991, they only had 141 patients. In 1993, Mansfield closed and was purchased by University of Connecticut, though many buildings were left abandoned. Sunrise Resort in Moodus. Sunrise Resort was created by Hartford taxi driver Ted Hilton in the 1930s. During its 92 years in operation, it was also known as the Frank Davis Resort. During its heyday, theme weeks were abundant, from Christmas time in July to Halloween in the summer. Music echoed throughout the 146-acre campus, brimming with such activities as horseback riding, sailing, swimming, tennis, basketball, and even an arcade plaza. Visitors stayed in rustic cottages, motel rooms, apartments, and resort lodging. The options were endless. The sun eventually set on this resort. When it closed in 2008, the property was sold to the Connecticut government and left in disrepair. Rather than restoring the site, the pool was filled and many of the buildings were demolished. Only 3 buildings remain at the entrance of the resort, along with tiled floors, basketball, and tennis courts. Castle Craig in Meriden. This lone tower pokes above the rocks within a park in central Connecticut. Though it looks like the ruins of a forgotten fortress, it's one wealthy man's gift to the city that stands in its shadow. It sits atop the east peak of the Hanging Hills, and is constructed of a local trap rock found in Hubbard Park. Castle Craig has a height of 33 feet and a base of 59 feet. Walter Hubbard, a wealthy industrialist, donated the tower in the early 20th century. It's said the castle's style was inspired by his many travels, so which exact travels are unclear. The tower has been compared to French Norman towers, a medieval Turkish tower, and an ancient Scottish ruin, making the inspiration behind its design a mystery. Climb the metal staircase inside Castle Craig and you'll have fantastic views of the park and beyond. From the tower, you can see the city of Meriden and the neighboring towns of Cheshire, Wallingford, and Southington. During the spring, you'll see thousands of daffodils sprouted in the park. There's a flagpole next to the castle and several hiking trails where you can find rock stacks, abandoned cars, and caves alongside the differing trails. Elmcrest Mental Hospital in Portland. Elmcrest Hospital was opened in 1942 as a small mental hospital. In 3 historic mansions on 17 acres, the hospital had inpatient and outpatient wards for children and adults, and a substance abuse program. The hospital also later opened an art therapy building for art, music, and dance. By 1997, Elmcrest had grown to 26 buildings and housing more than 150 patients. 150 special ed children also attended the school and a day program, with 475 staff taking care of the patients. The hospital was then sold to St. Francis Hospital in 1997, and a year later, an 11-year-old passed away after being restrained by a staff member. Reports of patient abuse grew and few lawsuits were filed against the hospital for bad treatment of patients. In 2000, another patient passed away from a drug overdose when the patient had been given 12 tranquilizers and other drugs from the hospital, resulting in many staff being fired. In 2003, the hospital moved remaining patients to a Mount Sinai campus, and the hospital closed for good. Then the hospital campus was purchased by Hartford Hospital, who had psychiatric programs for children and teens, but closed down in 2006. Now before we hit number 1, a lot of you guys asked me how I find all these abandoned places. And truthfully, I find all these places right on the internet. That's why in today's video, I am promoting NordVPN. NordVPN is essential to online life without limits. By shielding IP addresses, NordVPN protects users' privacy in virtual location, meaning you can see secret online websites that are only visible to specific IP addresses. The best part is that NordVPN offers a 30-day money-back guarantee for first-time buyers. You will be refunded the full amount if you are not happy with the service. If you guys would like to learn how to find abandoned places without the internet's limits, then I recommend NordVPN. It will be the first link in the description. Holy Land USA in Waterbury. In the early 1950s, John Baptist Greco, a staunch Roman Catholic, had a vision of a roadside theme park devoted to God. By the end of the decade, he had created exactly that, a theme park built to replicate a miniature Bethlehem. By the 1960s, the park was visited by some 50,000 people per year. One could come and see a recreation of the Garden of Eden, biblical-themed dioramas, and various tributes to the life and work of Jesus Christ. The park was perhaps best known for its Hollywood-style sign reading, Holy Land USA, and its 56-foot steel cross that can be seen for miles, especially when lit up at night. In 1984, the park was closed for renovation. Greco had hopes of expanding the site to attract more visitors. However, this was never achieved as he died in 1986. Responsibility for the park passed to a group of nuns. For a while, they tried to keep the park clean and neat looking, but never open to the public. Regardless of their efforts, the park became seedy and vandalized since Greco's death. Until 2014, the nuns owned the property. However, it is the local teenagers and foragers who have made their mark. Statues have been beheaded, dioramas destroyed, and the tunnels blocked. While much of the park remains, in recent years it has become completely abandoned. So guys, those are the top 10 abandoned places in Connecticut. Make sure you guys like and subscribe if you want to see a part 2. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe for more. Peace.